Hey everybody, what's up? Back for another Twin Peaks review of episode 10. We are now moving on past the Laura Palmer case to its aftermath, and then moving on to the next leg of the journey. Now, this is an episode that is titled "Dispute Between Brothers." It's pretty much referring to like one little thing in the episode that's really insignificant. So anyway, let's get started and get through this one. Probably be a little bit quicker than most because and it should give you a kind of a feel of what most of the episodes are going to be like going, from here on out. Get some good stuff intertwined with a lot of stuff that you may enjoy and you may find interesting and humorous and entertaining and or not. So let's see what we got. So we start out at the interior of Palmer's house with the photos of Laura and Leland Palmer on the mantle. This is we're told that it's 3 days after Leland's death, where all was revealed to Cooper and company. And basically she's kind of stuck where she has to basically go on without everything that she loved in life, basically being her husband and daughter. And Dale does what he can to comfort her, and explains basically, and not without getting into too much detail about Bob and all that other stuff, that Leland essentially was corrupted by an evil entity, long ago when he was an innocent child, and that Leland did not do the terrible things which he did, which is the truth. I mean, Leland was pretty much had no clue, given the control Bob had over his mind and his memory. So he was pretty, he had no idea until the end of what that had taken place over those past years. I don't know how long ago it had started, but 7, 8, 9 years or so of abusing his daughter. We do know now that Leland did in fact drug Sarah to keep her unaware of the actions that he perpetrated. So that was why she was all kind of sliding down the stairs and then passed out, because he'd been drugging her. Dale lets him know that Leland, at the end was confronted by the horrors of what he had done, and he had to, was forced to accept them, even if it wasn't him that had ultimately done it, at least consciously. And he believes that Leland at the end saw Laura, and that she welcomed him and forgave him for what he had done, and welcomed him into the peace of the afterlife. We get a shot of the stairs one more time. I don't know if I can't recall if that shot is ever shown again in the story. I'm gonna say no. I think it was just kind of the last time. Maybe I'm wrong, but its significance is no longer relevant, given that everything has kind of come to its conclusion as far as what happened to Laura. Afterwards, we have a kind of I'm assuming it's taking place after the wake. Makes me hungry for some reason. Thank goodness for small town hospitality, if anything. Nadine plays at being a maid or whatever, helping out. Remember, she thinks she's like 17, 18 years old. Hank feigns some civility. Donna tells Ed that she thinks that James feels that Laura and Maddie's deaths are all his fault, that he should have protected them, basically, and that now that everything that's happened in Twin Peaks is, all this chaos and sadness and all is somehow his responsibility, or at least that's the impression that she gets. Looks like Dr. Jacoby's all better. Major Briggs invites Dale for some night fishing before he heads out. And then Sarah mentions, while talking with Donna's mother and Audrey, that Donna and Laura, that she saw them one night, I guess overheard them making this real serious promise to each other that they'd be best friends forever, no matter what. And she thought it was kind of their way of making a bond against the notion of dying. I don't know if this had happened when Laura was worried about that. having an effect, or because of what had gone on, that her time was drawing to an end, or if it was when they were much younger or whatnot. So, but just a little bit of last bit of information in regards to Laura in this story, since she doesn't become much of a part of it until like towards later on in some probably more in a looking back type of manner, not as a focal point of the story. So just kind of summing up all the stuff that had gone on in the past between them and Sarah's overall impressions and how this is affecting her. So that's pretty much what we're getting, her wrap up of her part in the story, at least for a good portion of it. The mayor and his brother apparently have some sibling rivalry going on, which is the whole dispute between brothers. I don't know, that guy looks pretty good for 110, so I don't know if they're just BSing for the sake of it, but yeah. So now we're over at the high school after the wake at the Palmers. Dr. Jacoby and Eddie are working to convince the assistant principal to admit Nadine to the senior class, even though they realize that she's, much older than that, and she already graduated once, a long time ago. Audrey visits Dale at the Great Northern, his room, just to inquire whether or not he's leaving or not. Dale keeps her firmly in the friend zone, like a boss, of course. And then Audrey attempts to use teenage girl logic and makes the incorrect assumption that Dale isn't coming on to her or wanting to sleep with her because a woman in his past broke his heart. But no, Audrey, you're wrong. But this does lead into Dale revealing some information which is pertinent to the upcoming case involving him and his partner, Wyndham Earle, or his ex-partner. Basically, he and Wyndham Earle, who was his mentor at the time, were guarding a woman who was a witness to a crime, so she was under federal protection. Dale was not able to stop the murder when it was crunch time, so to speak, when it was mattered, and she died because of it. Dale was injured, and I'm assuming that's when Bob, or Leland as Bob, in the interrogation cell, mentioned something like, remember when he said, I have this thing for knives, kind of like what happened to you back in Pittsburgh, huh, Cooper? So I'm assuming that in that instance, Dale was indeed stabbed by the assailant who killed the woman. So that's not, like I said, I still don't know how Bob would know that, but maybe we'll find that out later. This is a big part of what is yet to come for the rest of the season as far as the main case, since this is a detective show. Basically, at its heart, you're a murder mystery detective type show. So, that's some good information and valuable to set the stage for what's going to come in future episodes. Bobby's dressing up for his job interview with Ben Horne. Basically, he's going to try to blackmail him to get a job of some kind. Catherine makes her first appearance back in Twin Peaks as herself at Harry Truman's office at the sheriff's department, and not as Mr. Tajimura. She mentioned something about guardian angels, which is interesting, and in some cases, it might seem inconsequential, but given this is Twin Peaks, it's hard to rule things like that out. Though, given the kind of person she is, that she's a backstabber and a manipulator and just kind of rotten, she's not the nicest of person. It may be her imagination, not literally a guardian angel, actually, of some shape or kind of actually coming to help her out. Dick shows up to talk to Lucy when she's changing a fluorescent light bulb at the sheriff's station about their Bambino, and he mentions that he's decided to be part of the local Big Brothers program, and thus, you can say, begins the saga of Uncle Dick, Uncle Andy, and Little Nicky, or Little Nicholas. So that's the comedic, portion of the whole thing, along with, Nadine. throughout the rest of the season. So yeah, that's basically what those guys are pretty much all about for the rest of the show. Though Andy does have a part to play that's a little more important. Harry meets Dale over at the sheriff's department. He's tied a fly for Dale, a green bud skunk, I guess, because he's going to go fishing, assuming fly fishing, with Major Briggs. He also gives him a Bookhouse Boys badge, and that says that all the guys agreed that he's now officially part of the group. Dale says goodbye to the crew at the sheriff's department right before Special Agent Hardy comes in with the ginger Dudley Do-Right and lets him know that he is suspended immediately from the FBI. And given what happened in Canada with One-Eyed Jacks, you can probably take a guess as to what this is all about. Over at the Great Northern, Bobby waits for Ben. Finally gets an audience with Ben thanks to Audrey. Then, of course, gets booted out just a little bit afterwards. So yeah, Bobby starting to realize that being on Audrey's good side will help quite a bit when it comes to trying to get something accomplished via her father. Dale talks with Special Agent Hardy about the issue in Canada. And even though you've like I said, you've watched this episode, I'm sorry. So you know that the Ginger Mountie is a fraud, it looks like a complete douche because he is a complete douche. But we are given that information in its entirety later on. But yeah, I don't think taking Canadian law enforcement seriously would make sense even in Twin Peaks. Nadine tries out for the cheerleader squad. Like I said, anything involving Nadine's storyline is pretty much, so what at this point for me. But if it's your first time watching the show, like I said, it's good to watch the shows and the episodes in their entirety. You might like it. I mean, I thought it was pretty funny the first time I saw it, but after a while, you kind of, certain stuff you just skip by. Bobby calls Shelley to talk about apparently what he's up to with regards to Ben Horne. Leo moved, apparently, according to Shelley. We getting these little hints that Leo may not be as completely brain dead as we think he is, but we'll have to see. And over at the diner, lo and behold, it's Norma's mother who is the mysterious M.T. Wentz. And if there was ever a reveal in this show that summed up the notion of anticlimactic, it would be this one. Did you even care? Did it even matter? I mean, it was basically a way for, to try to introduce Catherine as Mr. Tajimura as as not being merely Catherine come back in disguise. But you can see, Norma's mom always makes little criticisms of the food. She also, mentions a little when they're eating at the Great Northern, and she's talking. I think she's eating salmon, and she mentions a few, food critic type comments about it. So I guess those are some of the little hints you're supposed to get to find out who M.T. Wentz is. But it's like, who cares? Her mom's not a very nice person, and Norma wants her to leave and hit the bricks. So good for Norma. Don't keep people around that treat you like crap. Hank and the professor, Ernie, the Professor Niles, that is, they show up to talk with Jean Renault. Ernie, starts blowing copious amounts of smoke up Renault's backside and trying to act like he is the real deal when he's basically just a petty criminal. He ripped off a savings and loan. He acts like he's hardwired in with some of the, the big time drug cartels across, South America or whatever. It's hilarious. But Ernie's character is actually pretty funny, and he actually does have some pretty classic moments coming up. So yeah, he's a good addition, even though we had to deal with Norma's mother in order to get him there into the story. And then old Dudley Do-Right shows up with some cocaine that is apparently in need of a buyer. So yeah, we can see that the old Mountie is playing double agent. And apparently, yeah, Jean Reno thinks he's some kind of French Canuck Corleone now. The dawn of of One-Eyed Jacks. I told you I couldn't stand that guy. Harry wakes up to find at his house to find Josie has found her way through the woods. She looks kind of scratched up, kind of beat up. So apparently her leaving the country didn't go as planned, though it didn't look like she was going willingly to by any means. With her assistant or cousin, whatever you want to take to be as the truth about the Asian guy with the chin like Antonio Inoki. Yeah, and now this part actually, at the end, we finally get some more reveals and some good information to show yet there is stuff yet undone. There's some interesting things to look forward to that are coming up, and we're not just going to devolve into kind of dumb side stories with side characters. Dale and Major Briggs are hanging out, roasting marshmallows, talking about the previous events, specifically the existence of Bob. Dale says it's kind of hard to imagine him out there incarnate, assuming he means, perhaps as the owl, looking for another host to possess. Major Briggs believes it's basically some men's fate to face the greater evils that exist in the world. And that when faced with these things, these men can, assume one mindset or another. And he mentions, if they face it with fear, the vulnerability to darkness is greater, and that's important because I mentioned how Dale had mentioned at that one time about fear, keeping fear from your mind. Things aren't so bad if that's the case. He also says that there are ways to resist the darkness, that he himself and men like Dale are kind of born with these abilities that aid them in doing so. So Major Briggs is kind of opening up more to his own personal experiences with this kind of supernatural phenomenon in Twin Peaks. He mentions some place that's called the White Lodge, which is very, very important because we know of another lodge already and we know of the denizens that dwell within this lodge are not particularly nice, to say the least. But we get to ponder that further because Dale leaves to answer the call of nature, and when alone, an owl appears, then a flash of bright light where Major Briggs calls out for Cooper. We see a hooded kind of robed figure within this within this light, this beam, this kind of I'm assuming is natural, or it's an artificial source of light or from somewhere. The silhouette appears, and Major Briggs is gone when Cooper returns. Dale runs towards this kind of the light, that's kind of the after effect or afterglow of this light, but it continues to disappear until it's no longer there, and the episode ends. So yeah, we get some interesting means by which to end the episode. We talk more about the evil that exists out there in the darkness. This place called the White Lodge, which, if you go by just the naming conventions, of dark and light, black and white in that sense, and it must be a place, positive energy or goodness or something like that. And perhaps, because they are out in the middle of the woods while talking about all this, and remember how Harry, he gave his whole little spiel about the strangeness and the presence that are in the woods. So what exactly showed up? We know that the owls are not what they appear, but this does not necessarily mean that they're evil, because the owls may represent different entities that we have seen from the lodge where the one-armed man was, and the giant and whatnot. So just remember that just because an owl appears, it doesn't mean it's a harbinger of evil or darkness necessarily. And yeah, it was kind of interesting. This beam of light, almost like seemed almost kind of something you expect for like an alien abduction or of some sort. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I got to end it on a high note. And we'll have to wait and see what happens in the next episode, episode 11. So when that time comes, I'll have a review up and ready for you folks. Hopefully we'll get to learn a little bit more about these new bits of information that have been kind of slowly sprinkled out into the episode for us to ponder over. Maybe we'll learn a little bit more about the White Lodge. We'll have to wait and see. So until then, folks, hope you're doing well, and I'll talk to you later. Take it easy.